That's not me. That's how I'm supposed to be in this thing.
That's really awesome.
That's completely, and we're live, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be, Mike. Yes. So, hey, everybody, we're going to give everybody just a couple minutes to start coming on in, but I'm going to go ahead and do my preamble anyway. Welcome to the first episode of the local SEO Firehose. This is brought to you by our friends at Duda. I'm Ben Fisher of Steady Demand, and I'll be your host. So today we're going to discuss the local search marketing, the state of local search marketing, and I'm joined by the esteemed professor of Google Maps, Mike Blumenthal. If you don't know Mike, which you're crazy if you don't, Mike is the co-founder of Near Media. He's also
and you're crazy if you do, right? It's a no-win situation.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with that, Mike. But he's the co-founder of Near Media and also the advisor to Leadferno and Air.cam. Leadferno and Air.cam, I'm familiar with both of these products, and all I can say is they are just amazing. Leadferno is business messaging and a lot more. And then you have Air.cam, which, well, Mike, you can talk about Air.cam. It's images, obviously, right? And a little bit more. I think we'll be talking about that later on today. And then we are joined by the Hawk, Joy Hawkins of Sterling Sky. You all know Joy, and if you don't, again, you're also still crazy. But she is the co-founder, or I'm sorry, the founder of Sterling Sky. She is also in charge of Local U and the Local Search Forum. And so, yeah, with that, hi, Mike, Joy, thank you for joining me today.
I would add to Joy's bio that she does some of the best case studies going these days. So she has a good client base and allows her to test, and she tests everything. So to me, that's the badge of honor that you want to assign to Joy.
Thank you.
I have to agree. I have to agree. I love Joy's studies personally. Anything that can give us some really good objective data. And Mike, you used to do, and you still do a ton of case studies as well, right?
Yeah, I've cut back a little bit, ride my bike a little bit more, but when it's appropriate, I do
it. Right on. Well, cool. So, so let's just kind of get started, right? I mean, what we're going to talk about today is the things that really have kind of worked in 2021 and kind of look forward, to where we're heading in 2022, and really want to dig deep kind of into those two things, mainly where we're going in 2022, to kind of help, marketers and also, businesses just kind of get ready and start thinking about and preparing for what's coming. So we're going to start, and let's look back first. And what are the things that you have basically seen in 2021 that you feel are really going to continue into 2022 and had impact in 2021? Joy, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think some of the kind of realizations I've had in the last year is just how many misconceptions there are about local SEO and how it works. So did my best to try to debunk a few of them with blogs we put out, like, hey, geotagging your images doesn't influence ranking. But it's amazing, like still I go into Facebook groups and webinars and things and just find that the majority of tactics people are talking about with local SEO don't work. So I'd love to say that, next year is going to be the year that we debunk all of them, but it seems to be like, I don't know, the industry is not catching up quickly. But for those of you out there that do SEO, I really challenge you to think about the tactics you're doing and actually know if they are driving results or not. Don't just base it around what you think you've been told.
Well, right. It's about testing, right? And kind of like you show this with your case studies, of course, too. But, the SEO industry has been plagued by this problem, I think, ever since day one, really. I mean, I remember back in the days of Webmaster World, we used to call it the echo chamber, basically, because you could go into Webmaster World and somebody would say, oh, well, this works. And then everybody would say, oh, yeah, this works. And then when somebody pipes up and says, did you test it? They go, no, it just kind of seems like it works. And those myths didn't die for a long time until Google came around, basically, and said, yeah, sorry, that doesn't work.
Or what happens is it works for a period of time and Google changes the underlying architecture and then it doesn't. I mean, David Mim and I are responsible for 3/4 of the myths that are currently existing, because at one time they weren't myths, but now they become a religion, and businesses and empires have been made out of this religion.
Yeah.
Yext, for example, made a empire out of business listings, right? And it was a myth that it was true in the early aughts and became untrue later on, or less true, and yet it sticks around. So it's the way people want a silver bullet, and they're willing to take some answer and as their own, and willing to charge for it as a result. It's not a performance-based business for the most part, and so.
And I agree. I mean, I agree. It's like you're right. Yext has made an entire living off of something that a lot of people in the local search industry don't believe in anymore. We know it's not working, but they're still doing it. And I recently did a thread actually on Twitter with SEO SEMrush, and it was about basically, it was about these types of myths like exit data. If I buy AdWords, is this going to help my GMB listing? If I link to GMB, is that going to help? And these things, again, like you're saying, they won't die. But I got to call them the snake oil salesmen, especially on Facebook. Those guys, they have to have something to sell and something to provide a monthly report on, whether it works or not. And I remember talking to a big listing provider once at a conference, and I asked them, well, why do you continue to sell this if you know it doesn't work? And they said, marketers want it, not customers want it. Marketers want it. Mm-hmm. So hopefully one day that stuff will die, but I wouldn't bet too much on it. Mike, what do you think?
Well, obviously Google is the 800-pound gorilla of local, and I think that they've demonstrated their ability to coalesce customers and deliver those customers to businesses by dominating the SERPs and keeping people at the SERPs. And the trends at Google that we've been seeing, more transactions, more communications, better understanding of photos, those are all going to continue. And they're going to continue with Google wrapping those up, putting ads on more surfaces, keeping customers there longer. So the report that Joy put out the other day, which is a continuation of something I was reporting on in 2015, that Google My Business is delivering the bulk of leads, and they're not getting much further than Google My Business in that, with the second most, prominent place for leads to come from your website. So that trend is going to continue because it's in Google's self-interest, unless government steps in and says you can't do it anymore. And of those, I'm particularly fascinated with images because it's very low-hanging fruit. Every business needs good images. Very few businesses have good images. Images can be repurposed from Google My Business to your website, where Joy has shown again that they are incredibly valuable, to social, to ads. So it's one of the reasons I started working with Aircam, because I think, and Google has also sort of developed their understanding of images and are now using images not just to answer search queries, but to actually allow you to make a search query, which is a sort of new futuristic thing that they're doing with their new AI machine learning models.
I remember back in 2017, Mike, when you were talking about, you came out with the phrase that Google is the new homepage, right? And you're right, that has continued up to this day. And I think it's really intensified. Google does want to keep people, like you said, they want to keep people on the SERPs. And with the rollout, of what's called the direct edit experience, which is really just managing your GMB profile right from search. With the rollout of that, I mean, it's pretty much, you've almost got all of the GMB web activity can be done now right on Google search. And that keeps people right on search. And then, from the consumer side, of course, that's been continuing too. More features keep getting added to GMB. And so therefore more people are able to do the transaction basically right on search. And I think that's going to continue on next year. We might even see a bigger transaction layer actually next year, which I think that would be kind of exciting for businesses and marketers. Cool. So, Mike, you're just talking about images, and I know that you're doing a lot with Aircam and you're putting a lot of information about that. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about, how Google understands images as a query and kind of what you're seeing?
So let me put this slideshow on real quickly, just so you can see an example of this. So this actual photographic set came from a real world shoot where Aircam provides a marketplace for photographers to go into a business and to take photographs while they're taking the photographs, they match these photographs in real time against Google's understanding of the photographs. So this came out of a real world example that I think was presented first at Local U Advanced last quarter by Joel Hadley of Patient Pop. And so the question I would ask the audience is, when you look at these two images, is the one over the Near Media logo or the one over the Twitter logo the most appropriate, looks the most like a dentist to you? So hold that thought in your mind and then ask the question, which one looks more like a dentist to Google? And when Google offers a free tool that allows you to drop these images into their Cloud Vision API to understand, and when you do that, you can see how much Google understands about an image, right? And this has been evolving. I don't know if you remember, I think it was 2016, one weekend, Google switched every hotel image in the local SERPs from a interior shot to an exterior shot. Well, that was only possible with the power of image recognition AI. They've subsequently had numerous developments along this line with, for example, in 2018, they started doing the mobile thumbnails, which Joy just did a great study on. But clearly Google was not using title tags because nobody puts title tags on their images to speak of other than a few SEOs. But that's a small percentage of people. But Google's understanding a great deal. So if you look at the image on the left, Google can see that it's about glasses, medical equipment, and that it's a healthcare provider. But the image on the right, Google identifies this as a dentist. So a couple things about this, that if you want an image that's about a dentist, then these days you have to create an image that is both understandable to the user and understandable to the Google machine. And it's kind of like SEO content. It's got to be understandable by both audiences. And AirCam is doing this in real time. So the photographer will go in, take a bunch of shots that they like, and then they'll measure them against the AI, and the ones that match the criteria of the shot closest and is aesthetically pleasing be the one that's chosen. You can see that here. And in Joel's Hadley's case study of Patient Pop, and it's the similar results at Joy's with images on the local landing page, it resulted in greater conversions and higher rank for that local landing page. So these images are understood by Google, and you can look at this and see how much they can extract. They can extract logos and text. They can extract sentiment, human sentiment. Are people happy or sad? They can extract entities and properties and whether it's sexually suggestive or not. Now, they're not 100% correct all the time, but you need to understand, and this is, I think, going to be a big part of technical SEO going forward, that images communicate to Google as much or more than text does, and Google is going to increasingly rely on them for information about your results. And I would defer to Joy to explain her case study, which I thought was really good because it was an isolated long tail image.
Yep, exactly. And you just teed it up perfectly. Thank you, Mike. We can stop showing the slides now. And let's go over to you, Joy. You did a study that to do images impact ranking on Google. And you've actually been doing quite a few studies on images lately. So why don't you go ahead and let's go over some of those.
Yeah, so it's on the sterlingsky.ca blog, and I think it's like one of the most recent 5 ones that we did. But
yeah, I think I reported on it either Monday or last Monday. It's one of the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, so it was, so we had a lawn care business, and I don't give up on things easily. So I was trying to get this lawn care company to take over a featured snippet from, I think it was like Home Depot or someone, I can't remember. But I was determined to get the featured snippet and tried like a whole bunch of things, moved content around, changed things, changed some meta descriptions and like different tags on the page and stuff. And got to the section where I was like, okay, I'm going to start messing around with the image. So I noticed that the image was really small and dinky, and was like, I was wondering what would happen if I just used a larger image. So I tried to get one from the client who didn't give me one as quickly as I wanted. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to go get my own. Found a picture of a skunk because the whole topic of the page was all about what to do if skunks are digging holes in your yard. So like, okay, picture of a skunk is relevant and matters. So I'm going to use that. It was this big, nice photo. We actually saw the ranking decline after I switched out the photo. So I was like, well, that was not intended. So I was like, go back to the drawing board, hassled my client quite a bit more, and got him to send me a picture of actual lawns with this problem. And what I realized is when I went to Google and I searched the query that I was trying to get him ranked for, all of the images that were showing up were pictures of lawns with holes in them. Like the picture of the skunk was totally off topic. Like it was not at all what Google wanted to show, even though I thought it was relevant to the topic because it's literally about skunks. That's not what Google thought. So we swapped out the photo of the skunk with the photo that the client sent me, which was a nice photo of a lawn showing all the holes in it. And we actually took over the featured snippet within a week. So it was a big learning lesson for me, but definitely on the organic side, not Google My Business, but on the organic side, photos on your website definitely can impact, where you rank directly. Not like a possible thing, like we actually saw a direct impact from it.
And on the local side, we've seen mixed results in that. Like some businesses have seen significant ranking gains and conversion gains, and some don't see any in Google My Business. So it's unpredictable. But we did a large scale study with 3 local restaurants out of a massive chain in Los Angeles, and they were the only 3 in the whole market to see month over month gains when they got new appropriate photos in Google My Business. So it's unpredictable in Google My Business. But that being said, I would suggest that Google's going to give you your fair share of searches. It's going to give every business their fair share of searches, depending on the SEO they've done on their website. And the difference, though, is which one is the user going to choose. And reviews are an obvious low-hanging fruit there, but I think photos is the next obvious hanging fruit. That if you look better, look more professional, it's going to increase the likelihood you get chosen. So it's not a ranking thing; it's a conversion attribute.
Yeah, I would agree. Business. We didn't see the same thing across every industry either. So we tried the same thing on a lawyer and saw no impact. But I think that's because lawyers by nature, they're not an image heavy industry. Right. Like, what are you going to look at photos of? Whereas like a dentist, you do want to see pictures of like teeth or like the problem that you have to see, oh, do I have that problem? So it's very different based on the industry for sure.
Yeah, and products are an obvious place, like jewelry, sporting goods. Because even if you do a long tail search, for example, on a Nikon camera, it will show a local pack. And if the local pack has a Nikon camera, it'll show the Nikon camera. So it's particularly relevant in product search.
I definitely have to say, Google's been able to read images for quite a long time. I believe it was 2013 or 2014 when they officially announced it, that they could actually understand the meaning behind an image. And the beauty, I think, of the Cloud Vision API, and side note, by the way, Skincare USA, you're asking where can you put images where Google can see how Google identifies them. Just do a search for Cloud Vision API or Cloud Vision and Google, and you'll come to a site, and there's a button that's going to say test the API, and you can just go ahead and drag an image on there, and it'll show you everything except for the entities that are associated with an image.
There's about 3. I think there's 3 different APIs around images that Google offers, so they give you different data in different ones.
They used to show the entities actually with Cloud Vision, and then they removed it. Although it's still there, you just have to basically pay for that access. But it's kind of interesting, how it is accelerating, and I agree that Google's understanding of images is extremely deep. And as humans, we're very visual creatures, right? So it just makes sense that they can marry up the intent of a search with basically the entities or the labels, in a sense, of what an image is about, and then show you something that's going to basically trigger you to go ahead and click on something that you're actually looking for. And I have to agree. I think next year it's just going to keep on going, getting better and better.
One of the unintended side effects of any AI machine learning is the darker side, where they don't understand an image. So they use, for example, this image understanding in terms of filtering Google posts. I saw a post of mold on a wall, and it got rejected because it was sexually suggestive.
You're using my example, Mike.
Oh, am I? Well, this was about as sexually unsuggestive as I could imagine, right? Mold on a wall. It was clear to me what it was. It wasn't clear to the AI.
It was in the upper corner.
It was a little corner. It was like a little crease or something. I don't know. Somehow creases are sexually suggestive. But Go figure. So that's why you need something like Vision AI or a tool. Aren't you building a tool that assesses images as well, Ben?
Yeah.
Any demand?
Actually, we're building basically an interface to the Cloud Vision API that includes all of this data, and also will allow you to input information into some of the fields, like copyright, for instance, that Google will not strip when it's uploaded to Google My Business. But then you can also download them in a really great format to throw up on your website as well.
Oh, good. So let's start a new rumor that you can put lat long in the copyright field and it ranks you better. That'll give Joy something to do next year.
I can actually get it to stick, but you know what? It does not impact ranking.
Okay. Shoot, I just thought I had an opportunity here.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to check that out, it's called imageranks.com. It's not prime time though. But so actually, I want to take a quick break here and let's answer a couple questions, because Images has opened up a little bit of a Pandora's box. So let's go ahead and just answer some. Okay, so let's see. So the first is from Sarah Lieberworth. If we could get that up on screen, thank you. So, what are the chances of getting users to visit a website via pics from the website that they found on Google Image Search? What do you think? Mike, you want to take a stab at it?
Well, I wrote an article at Near Media where products are now being placed in the SERPs from image search that you can actually then click on the image search with the price on it and go buy the product on the website. So Google is using these images and pulling them into the main search results and wrapping them in the e-commerce content of the website. So I see it as a huge opportunity in terms of share of SERPs to have some e-commerce information properly set up so that Google can put the image into image search and then bring it into the search results when people are searching for it. So I don't know how often somebody goes into images and then goes to the website from that, other than to steal the image for a presentation like I do. I do that a lot, but but if you get on the main pages of the SERPs, I think that's incredibly valuable. And I think that can happen, particularly through products.
So you heard it here first that, if you're one of those guys who goes out and sues anybody for copyright, or
all my uses are educational. All my uses are educational. They're all legitimate, I swear.
Totally joking. Go ahead, Joy. You had something?
Yeah, you can track this. It's actually really easy. So one of the recent articles we did on images, I think it's the one that's titled how many leads can you get from images? I show how to track this in Search Console. So if you go to Search Console, it's easy to miss, but I think the default is web, and you can change that to image. So you can actually see how much traffic you are getting from Google image searches. And we've seen tons of traffic, like for our clients, coming from there.
Does it convert?
And I don't know if that's
I was about to say, does it convert?
Yes. So that's literally what the article is all about. It's like, how many leads did we drive? So we were able to isolate when we added the image, nothing else was changed on the page. And then we looked at the, number of leads that page was driving versus before. We're not talking like astronomical, like your phone's going to blow up because you added an image to your site. But the example we used was a procedure for a dentist that was like thousands of dollars. So the guy has to, make one sale to not even like maybe half a sale to justify a fraction of the cost that it took for us to put the image there.
Wow.
So I think the key is, again, the industry, but then also making sure that you're not just like grabbing a stock photo, because Google is not going to show 15 of the same photo in their search results. So if you want to be included, make sure you have original photos.
We've seen a huge bias against stock photos. It's not, they don't not always work. They sometimes do work, which can be deceptive, but if there's alternatives. So Joy, do you know the path? Was it directly from image search to the page? Or was it through some way that the image got into the main search, like with the product search?
This is almost something I'd want to throw at like Dana or like Glenn Gabe, but like, I don't know exactly how Search Console identifies like an image click, whether I'm assuming it could come from the main section of Google, not like the images tab, just the same way that like Maps traffic could come from Maps tab, or like it also comes from the local search results and stuff. So I'm assuming it's both. It's not specifically people clicking images first.
Speaking of the images tab, there's, and Mike, back to the tool you were referencing that we're building, right? You can actually embed a copyright into an image, and that
Is
will
this the one
actually
that causes the rank to increase?
yeah, copyright increases ranking, of course. You heard it here first. So no, but seriously, the cool thing about this is to what Joy was just talking about, is that if you can get the copyright, it's like a little tab that shows up on the bottom of an image. But if you can get that to show, that will actually increase the click-through rate from it. So for instance, if you say it's open to anybody for your Creative Commons, then you can have that. And when somebody clicks on that, it'll go to the Creative Commons licensing basically on your site. And then you can use that as part of your conversion funnel to bring people into the rest of your products and services, etc. So it's just another identifier that can kind of increase the chances of those click-throughs. Cool. So I want to kind of round out this conversation about images by just saying, and if you don't have anything extra to add to this, that's totally fine. But how do you think images are going to impact search behavior next year and in the future?
Who's going first?
Mike, do it.
Okay, so clearly Google is intent driven, and we're going to see increasing matches between intent and images. That is obvious. It's been happening. You can see it happening in the local pack. You can see it in the mobile thumbnails. You can see it in ads. You can see it in the images that show up in the search result from image. Where I think we're going to see more of going forward is what Google introduced with their new MUM system, where images are now just a subpart of a bigger natural language understanding of the world. And Google is going to start using images to deliver search as a part of the query. So you can drop an image into the query, add some context to it, and Google can then give you results. Now you've started to see this in Google Lens, where you can drop an image in and then get a result back, but it's only a single sort of image matching, doesn't have any context. So what you're going to see Google do is allow you to add context. And I think it might, I'm not saying it will, open up a new area for SEO optimization, which is understanding that type of search and delivering it with good images. I mean, I think it's the same good images that we've developed through understanding what Google thinks about them. I don't think it's something special, but I think there'll be a new pathway into results using these images. I don't think it's just this year. I see this as a 10-year project or a 5-year project on the part of Google. They're just beginning it.
Absolutely. What about you, Joy? You have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think Google's going to start pushing ads more with images. So we saw this with, local service ads, with, realtors and lawyers. Now they have photos of the people in the ads, which make them just like instantly your attention goes to them. And now we're seeing that as well with image extensions, which are rolling out to a lot of accounts. Like it's rapidly rolling out. And what's really awesome about image extensions, I'm kind of like doing some testing on them right now, is that you can literally see which image converts the best, which is like super, super helpful. You can't really do that with SEO. I mean, you could try like swapping it out, but it's hard to measure it. But with ads, literally I can see all the, 5 images I added and then which one converted better. So it's amazing information to have as a marketer. It's exciting.
And there's one test I've been seeing, I think it's a test, it's pretty common though, which is search by photos, which is this new visual layout that reflects the intent of the query and looks almost like Pinterest, the search results. And it gives you just a review star summary, not much more information. You click into a panel of images. So it's conceivable to me, again, that in particularly product focused intent queries, that we may see these visual panels of images coming up in the search results, either from image search or from this new search by photos. So I think they're going to play an ever increasing role. I mean, obviously in AdWords, that's amazing. So
interesting. Doth Barker had an interesting question here. And that is that, well, speaking of images, what about video?
Yeah, I think video is definitely an element that most people forget to use. So definitely important, but I think it's it's one of those things that is still kind of hard to track. So that is probably the biggest challenge small businesses have. They have this YouTube channel with videos, and it's really tough to attribute leads from a video.
Yeah. We have like some superbly converting videos about suspensions and reinstatements, and we were not able to really hone in and track on it until we got to 1,000 subscribers, so that way we could actually put annotations in and links that had UTM strings. But our sales team still says, yeah, I mean, we have to ask, and then people say, oh, it came from a video. So I agree. It's very difficult to track video. Mike, your thoughts?
Well, just a thought on creation and content from an SEO agency point of view. There are new tools on the market that allow you to have super high quality video that records locally but consolidates the results in the cloud. For example, Riverside.fm, which we're using at Local U and Near Media to record. So it creates super high videos, and you can mix and match the channels for the output. The idea that I've long had, which these tools now answer, is that any SEO could call their small business, put the owner in front of his computer, ask them 5 or 6 or 7 questions, give them 2 minutes to answer each, and you have a year's worth of video content in a half hour or an hour of work, that where the owner, who is typically not really articulate enough to write about these things, can talk about them forever. And I just see Riverside FM as being an interesting tool to do that, because it produces super high quality videos, because it records everything locally and then loads it up to the cloud. And it would give an agency the ability to then parse these, package them, and then reuse them in multiple places: the website, YouTube, etc.
That's brilliant, Mike. I'm like writing down. I'm like, talk to Richard when this is done. He's going to love that you brought this up.
The only thing I think that's a problem with video and search, right, is that I believe that Google still uses the title, the descriptions, the keywords, the tags to rank a video in SERPs, right? But I don't believe that they're advanced enough to completely understand everything that is happening visually in the video. They've got the audio, right? They've got the captions. But to actually understand, for instance, that this is a conversation about local SEO.
Well, I've been using Descript, but also Riverside has this ability to do a transcription, which then has to be lightly edited, which would be posted with the video. So, 1 minute of video or 2 minutes of video would be, 6 or 7 paragraphs. So it wouldn't be a monumental task to edit it and assign it with it. So I think you could get both benefits from the project. And if you try it, Joe, I'd love. This is an idea I had long before Riverside came out. I just couldn't figure out how to do the technology to implement it. But I think that Riverside solves the problem, and I just would love to know how well it works. So if you do it, let me know.
Oh, I'm going to do it. I'll let you know.
Okay. Do I get a tie? Can I get a tithe on this?
You heard it here, Riverside.
Yeah, I'll make sure all my clients know it was your idea.
Oh, okay. I was thinking more like 10% of the take, but I'll take what I can get.
All right. So we have gone through a half an hour. We've talked about images and video, which is all freaking great stuff. It really is. So I'm waiting to see the next image search optimization company that's going to be out there. So let's move into some fun stuff, and let's kind of divert.
Hold it. This was fun stuff. You mean more fun stuff?
Of course. Yes. Okay. We got other topics we got to go through here.
All right.
No, but seriously,
I thought we were told we had to talk for 3 hours so that we can demonstrate our vast knowledge.
2.5 hours actually.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, just saying. So even though we are all Google My Business product experts, let's talk about Apple. Apple this year has made some really good waves. They've redone the whole side for the consumer side, right? And made it a lot better for discovery. And on top
Apple
of that,
Maps we're talking.
Yes, Apple Maps, absolutely. Not like a MacBook. But yes. But no, seriously, it's like, and also, we've seen the fact that now they're doing review recommendations. You can do it natively on the platform. You don't have to rely on Yelp. They're still taking the text reviews from Yelp, but I believe that, who knows, that might go too. What I'm kind of curious about in this, and my question to you, Mike, is that you've been tracking both of these components pretty closely as well. What do you see? What did you see this year, and what do you feel like next year is going to be the big opportunity with Apple?
So let me tell you a little story, a history story. I was consulting with SeaWorld. My kids gave me all kinds of grief about it because of the killer whale and all those issues. But I thought, meanwhile, I'm paying them their way through college and putting food on their table. I'm going to do this. But anyways, morals notwithstanding, they called me one day totally desperate. This was 2014, 2015. There were people piling up at their back gate. And it was a disaster because the maps were wrong. And they called me and told me Google Maps were wrong, which I checked and they weren't. And when I did finally get to the bottom of it, it was clear that it was Apple Maps driving these, right? So there's two morals to this story. One is Apple Maps was driving a lot of navigational traffic as long ago as 2014, 2015. And two, they weren't very accurate. They've spent the last 10 years making Apple Maps a great product. I am a Apple fanboy. Joy knows this about me, so you have to take everything I say about Apple with a grain of salt. But I have really come to appreciate Apple Maps as a primary navigational tool. And so for me, that it's gotten really good. It's a 10-year project by Apple. They decided to build a map and they've invested in it year in, year out, and now it's good. And that's how Apple rolls, right? So last year they introduced reviews. Last year they also went around to every major listing provider that had any volume and said, give us original photos. I came across this because I talked to a number of them. They all confirmed that Apple was asking for original photos. So they added reviews and photos. With iOS 15, they added a new layer on Apple Maps, a default layer called Explore, which is much like a default layer on Google Maps, where it surfaces high volume, high interest mapping targets like restaurants, coffee shops, grocery stores, it's hotels. And also, though, they've added a number of guides that detail these things. They've added new ways of finding them by searching near me and surfacing things. They've added a whole new presentation to the local listings. So while I don't know, and one of the problems with Apple, it's totally dark traffic, and it's difficult to understand how much you're getting. Meanwhile, Apple isn't like Google. They don't throw shit at the wall and hope it sticks. They start building in a direction and they build that way for 10 years. So what you're seeing is Apple sort of has polished up their navigation really well. And now they're moving on to discovery. And I see this again as a 5 or 10 year project on the part of Apple. And when they put their mind to something, sooner or later they nail it. And I see that as happening with discovery. There's a number of other places where this shows up. It's now on every Mac. It's in CarPlay. It's on the watch. It's on the phone. So there's somewhere 1.5 billion users worldwide, 2 billion users. I don't know, a lot. And probably in the United States, 200 million users of Apple Maps. So even if you don't get discovered there a lot and you just get recovered, your reputation is still at stake. So it's important. But I believe it's going to be delivering customers. I looked at a hotel the other day, and in analytics, 25%, they got as much direct traffic from Apple as they got from Facebook or Yelp. And it was a hotel and restaurant, so it's sort of that target demographic, but they're getting a lot of traffic. So I see this is only increasing. So first you need to determine if you're in that category. If you are, then it's important to know.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. And also, Skins Care USA has a quick question about how do we submit client locations to Apple Maps? This was actually released, I think, about 2 months ago, I want to say. And they now do have a control panel that can be used where you can put in all sorts of information. And it is located at register.apple.com/places on maps, I believe. And they just also recently added the ability to add multiple managers actually to listing too. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about that real quick?
Just that a number of listing companies like Uberall now through Moment Feed and Reputation.com do listings. So if you're using a listing service, you can use them for that. I think Moz does through Uberall.
Yeah. Moz does it as well, I think so. Joy, did you have anything that you wanted to add about Apple Maps or even?
I actually had a question for Mike because, I'm not an Apple user, so his knowledge of this is way, way above mine. If you're like a business and you want to know if you have reviews even being left or monitor them, but you don't have an iPhone, how do you see that?
So currently it's visible in CarPlay, which is, you might have it in the car. If you don't have an iPhone, I guess you don't have that. Or on the Mac is the other way. You can see it. So,
so if you don't have an Apple device, you can't see how you're doing on Apple Maps.
that's correct. So you may need to go out and buy a used Apple device just as an agency, just to be able to check it for your clients. There is no tool that I know that's tracking these yet. And it's not individuals. It's just a summary data. It's done with a survey. It's quick 4-question survey.
Yeah.
Yes, up or down, thumbs up or thumbs down, and then they produce an aggregate result. I think GatherUp, though, my bidding, I still have some influence there, not as much as I would like, but they actually can ask for Apple reviews now on GatherUp, which would be best done in real time. But somebody's there with an iPhone, you send them the link, which you could do with or without a tool.
And that actually answers Sarah Lieberworth's question, which is how can we ask basically for Apple reviews?
The limit to it is that Apple tracks to guarantee the quality of reviews, they track user locations. So you could send it off to 200 people and you might not get a review show up because they weren't at your location either long enough or recently enough. So it's why I'm suggesting you might want to think about doing it as part of a customer ask right when they're in your location.
Yeah.
So more like Yelp?
I was about to say Yelp.
Well, it's just it's a quality thing for Apple. I mean, they're very concerned with gaming, and obviously, and so they do validate that users actually visited a location, because with Apple, every user has an ID. Apple knows every user, so it's also very difficult to go out and buy reviews in that environment because there is no made up users for Apple. They're all real, or they're real enough to have an iPhone, I guess.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if Google could learn from that? Just saying. You have a Google account. Yeah, right now, right? Oh, we won't go down that rabbit hole.
Well, would be one of my predictions, though, for 2021. I believe that government scrutiny, and we're seeing it to some extent. I know Joy's writing about this to some extent. That I think Google's going to make an effort to clean up their reviews. I think there's going to be a lot of fallout from that, where good reviews don't show. But I do believe that because of increased scrutiny, Google is going to get better at getting rid of fake reviews. Now, like all their AI, it's 80% smart and 20% stupid. So watch out.
And we're sure seeing that 20% right now. And Skincare USA has.
Well, hello, question. Google. I'm glad you're listening.
So Skincare USA has one more question that we'll add on to this, and that is what about Bing? My answer to that is, what about Bing? Anyway.
Bing.
Yeah, it is. We have some clients that get, some traffic from Bing. So I think it's one of those things. Look in Google Analytics if you see that it's got enough volume to justify work being done there. But like anytime we've ever tried to do tactics for Bing specifically, there's no ROI because the volume's not high enough. So
yeah, and the spam that's in Bing is so outrageous. Unfortunately, they only have 2 people, I think, on the Bing team, the local team. So the spammers basically said, hey, we can do Google. Now let's go ahead and just flood Bing. And basically, yes, I've been tracking some spam that's been there, and it's been there for 2 years now, something like that. They just don't clean it up. So
yeah, if your users are still on Internet Explorer 10 or 11 or whatever, they're probably, if that was your user base, you're probably going to succeed at Bing.
There you go. Cool. So the next thing, and I'll just field this one really quick, is that I think that this year has been amazing when it comes to local service ads, GLSAs, and ever since they've expanded it out to all the new service areas and the different businesses, like lawyers, for instance, with the Google Guarantee
and new partners. They're now partnering with likes of Zillow and large marketplaces to sell these ads.
I haven't seen that one. Okay. That's really good to know. But also, I put this out a couple of weeks ago, and that is that, we're now seeing the GLSAs actually on mobile as well. So when you click into, any of the 2-pack basically, you go ahead and the first two things that you're going to see is you're going to see an LSA ad, and then you'll see your organic results. So I think that this is just going to continue to really dominate, and I dare say continue to dilute actually the organic rankings going into next year. Whether they're going to expand it out to even more categories and industries, I think that is still left to be seen. But the ROI that merchants are getting from LSA is tremendous. Joy, I think I saw you. I think it's like Matt had one customer that increased their sales by what, 400%?
It's
right?
crazy.
Yeah. And we see the same things. I mean, we're seeing 200, 300, 400% easy just by paying attention to LSA in the proper way and using the right kind of processes. So yeah, I predict that next year it's going to explode. But Joy, out of curiosity, since you also do LSA work, what do you think about LSA in next year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping they expand more to like different verticals and stuff. So I know they definitely did this year. We had a client in Toronto that didn't have them before that has them now. And the only thing I would say is like for some industries, it's crazy competitive. So the results are not very stable, so you'll see, because if there's, 20 people in the pool and there's 3 spots, it is insane. So like, in general, Google Ads world, what ends up happening is the cost per click ends up skyrocketing. But with LSA, what we see is just the results aren't as like consistent if you're in one of those categories. So it can go up and down quite a bit just based on competition.
I
would
have
say
a question.
It's good, but it's not super stable.
I have a question about LSA. So with infinite scrolling on mobile, I'm seeing ads panels pop up every whatever 1,000 pixels. Do you think LSAs will do the same thing in mobile, where they'll pop up every 1,000 pixels? I mean, there is no surface that Google is going to leave untouched from an ad point of view. The question is whether it will include LSAs in my mind. But
it sounds like something that's going to be pretty natural, especially given exactly what Joy was just saying, which is that there's such fierce competition. I know in my talks with Google reps, that's part of their concern, is that there is only 3 spots and there's so many people who want to get into the system. So you can only pump your budget and your max lead cost so much before it doesn't make any kind of sense. Mm-hmm. And with more and more people funneling into the system, which are trusted, basically, they're going to have to come up with a way to basically show more. They're going to have to. And we already know that it's an extremely profitable system for them. They're making a ton of money off of this. So this is basically, I guess you could call it almost the next Google AdWords in a sense, quote unquote, right? But yeah, they're going to have to. I think that yes, I think Mike, I think they're going to have to do something like that. What do you think, Joy?
Yeah, it's a scary test that we noticed. So one of our clients actually sent it to us, and then we spotted it. One of my team members spotted it yesterday. Is that they're starting to show ads now, like local service ads for branded searches. So they're testing it. Not everybody can see it, but it'd be like, somebody searches for a specific company by name, and there's like a carousel of all their competitors, which is awful. Like, I really hope Google doesn't roll this out. But I mean, they do it for regular ads. So part of me kind of expects that they're going to go that route. I'm going to put a post out on locally.
It's better for the consumer.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, like that's their thought process.
Those are fuck you air quotes.
There's the Mike we love.
It's more like this, right? Jeez.
I'll share my screenshots in the article. I'm going to post it on Local U next week. But like, it's going to piss off some people for sure.
Right. I mean, my advice in this context, any advertising context though, is that assuming you're not just churning through customers, once you get that customer, you want to own that customer relationship, get their email, get their SMS, and then stay in touch with them. So you're not continually renting these customers back from Google or Facebook. I mean, life is finite, customers are finite, and you got to treat them really well so that they recommend you to their friends and they come back themselves. There's power, and you stay in touch with them through email and through other means that don't cost you every time you flick a switch.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of GLSA anyway, right? Is that, A, you're getting their phone number. B, if you've got messages turned on, you are definitely texting them back and forth probably. And then C, once you bring them in the door, you have to, again, this is kind of what I've seen as far as the biggest problem with LSA and merchants, businesses, is that their processes suck. And they're not asking for instance, an email right up front. They're not asking for the name and the first name and last name and exactly how do you spell this right up front. So, but yeah, I mean, I agree. At the end of the day, Google's giving you this data. They don't give it to you on AdWords, in pay-per-click. So you might as well take advantage of it. And yeah, you own the customer at that point. Absolutely.
And you need systems to be able to own them effectively with compassion and caring and understanding what the customer needs, because otherwise you're continually having to run them back. And it's we've seen how rich it makes Google and Facebook, and at some point you need to take care of yourself, take care of your own.
Agreed. Well, cool. So let's move on to a topic that, Mike, is near and dear to your heart, and that is rankings. So recently did a rankings study here that proved basically that it was 11,000 business listings that we went through. And just taking a look at the review snippets, saw that, listings that had an overall ranking of 4.1 or higher were ranking in the top 3. And also listings that did have a higher volume of reviews were ranking. Given your history on reviews, Mike, especially with Gather Up, what are your thoughts on that, and as far as reviews today and where they're going tomorrow?
So first, let me put it in context. We did one, David Mim and I and Mary Bowling and Will Scott and maybe Andrew Shotland did one of the first correlation studies of ranking factors in 2008. And what we saw at that time was that reviews had a non-linear relationship to ranking. So at the time it was 10. If you got 10, you'd get a bump in ranking. If you got 100, there was a bump in ranking. I have no idea what it is now, but it's not a linear relationship. I think the other problem is because people think it's a ranking factor, I think I need to copyright this air quote thing. I think it's such a good idea. But people get the idea that, that it's a linear thing. I have more reviews than the next guy, therefore should rank higher. The reality of reviews is they offer so much value beyond what, minimal impact they're going to have on your ranking is that I think that you end up putting the cart before the horse. The cart for me is, like I was talking about before, is taking care of your customers, which is customer experience, which is why in Gather Up, we built NPS at the core of the system because we really wanted to know what people thought. When you tie direct first-party reviews with NPS and content, first-party content and third-party reviews, you end up with a really honest appraisal of the business, and you throw some natural language machine learning at it, and you can learn a tremendous amount about your business or competitors' business. And to me, that's the power of reviews, is to help you improve business and improve your relationship with your customer. So the ranking is of interest to me tangentially, but it is not the primary thing that I think about when I think about reviews. I don't know if you saw my article at Near Media where I showed how you could use reviews to track their stock level problems over time. We actually could track month to month when they were having worse stock problems, worst inventory problems, and whether they were actually recovering. And this was 2 months ago. I predicted they wouldn't be able to recover in time for Christmas. You're now seeing reports that they're not able to recover. They're still having. So reviews are incredibly insightful. Google uses them to extract data. You should too. And so to me, it should be part of a bigger picture of running your business, as opposed to just this transactional thing of let's get one more review from one more customer. Fuck that. You got to ask for the review, but you also need to put it in the context of making your business better.
So Mike is officially going to be responsible for StreamYard putting in a little, sensor filter. Just saying.
I don't know. That word has become so common in our vocabulary. It's no longer a dirty word. It's just an exclamation.
No, but on to what you're talking about. Yes, I agree, Mike. I mean, and I really wish the industry would come around a little bit more to the fact that everything that we're doing from a marketing standpoint, local or organic, it really should be focusing on conversion. And in the case of reviews, improving your business, because improving your business is going to increase conversions at the end of the day too, especially the healthiness in the long run of the company. So I completely agree. Joy, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about with this really quick?
Yeah, Colin actually is presenting at our upcoming local U event in November on a case study of a client of ours where he was actually able to get rid of a negative review that was stuck in their knowledge panel. So Google highlights 3 reviews in the knowledge panel for every business. And we often see like they will pick a negative one and throw it in there. And it's like the last thing people want to see is like, this company sucks. Like, that's just not what you want highlighted. So it was a really interesting case study, but I've been personally fascinated by like which reviews did Google stick at the top and why. So we're doing like an in-depth case study on that right now that I'm going to publish next year just to figure out like which ones stay at the top and what features do they have. Because I feel like nobody's talking about that. Those reviews are super influential because, a business is only as good as its recent reviews. Like if you've seen a really great business that did well historically, but all the recent reviews are negative, like that's a problem. So that's kind of what we've been looking at and studying, and I'm fascinated by what I'm seeing so far. I'm like 6 months into it. So yeah, it's really
very cool.
Now, a couple of months, I don't know, was it maybe 9 months ago, Google sort of shifted up what reviews they were showing based on both the intent of the search, and they seemed to reorder it based more on popularity of certain phrases in the searches. I think there's maybe Whitespark wrote about this. Are you seeing anything like that, Joy?
We have not. So what they wrote about, I haven't seen roll out for tons of our clients. Like they talked about how the review snippets were updating in the knowledge panel. So we've been tracking quite a few. So I have not seen that. I don't know if it's like geo specific or what the deal is, but those 3 that Google pick, I think they get updated like every couple of years, maybe even longer. Like it is not like regular, however.
And those are actually picked by a different company, if I remember correctly.
I have no idea how they pick them like that. I don't think anyone's ever going to figure that out. We're looking at that, but then I'm also looking at just like when you click most relevant, that's the automatic sorting. So when you look at a business's reviews, what makes a review most relevant? That's kind of what I'm looking at. So it's interesting to watch.
Cool. Well, we're running down near the hour here, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to move directly into a topic which I'm sure everybody's going to want to hear about, and that is let's talk about the willful non-action by Google on spam. Our favorite topic. Spam this year has gotten worse, at least in our eyes as marketers, right? And our customers are feeling it for sure. And Google has also this year, I think, ratcheted up the non-action on spam. So, more and more businesses are rebranding themselves with keywords. Keywords still have a huge impact on search in local. And Google's kind of ignoring it because they see it as a really small problem. So I think I want to go with our curmudgeon in charge, and that is Mike. Why don't you open up the salvo?
Me?
Open up the salvo.
Yeah, it's the way that Google looks at these problems is so out of touch with reality, they'll never be able to see the problems. So that's issue 1, right? They look at aggregate 150 million local entities and they see spam in whatever 1%, and they say it's not a problem. But in certain verticals, in certain markets, it can be 85% of the results. In Los Angeles, in personal injury lawyers, I would guess that's the case, maybe in locksmiths in Miami. But so it's a very localized thing, but their tools don't localize the issues. Also, because local is so location dependent, as you move through space, the results change, so that a spammer can put results every 5 miles. And even though Google only sees that each of those results only getting 1 potential interaction, it adds up for spammers. So I think part of the problem is Google just is willfully ignoring it. The other is they've clearly, like in name spam, which we call spam, they just call labeling or something. I don't know. They have a different name for it. They obviously don't think that name spam is spam. So
Descriptors.
So there you go. So my suggestion there is use a few. If Google's not going to penalize you, what's the risk? What would you say about that, Joy?
Yeah, I think that there's different levels of spam as far as Google's concerned. So they
Right.
are always most concerned about what they deem as harmful to users. And I think the biggest challenge they have is reviews. Like that's the one type of spam that I've seen little to no progress on. Like it's just insane how many obvious review networks go undetected by Google. Like insanely obvious. Like you can look at, for 5 minutes someone's reviews and tell that they're fake,
Right.
but Google can't tell.
Did you see Greg's report out of Uberall today detailing
No, I
that
haven't.
Google is the leader in fake reviews with almost 25%
I think it was
their
like
total.
Yep.
So there's a company, I'm not sure if you've heard of them, Mike, that's just launched a tool. And full disclosure, they're a sponsor for Local U. So
Well, this is Curtis Boyd, right?
yes.
He did.
Oh my gosh.
He did the study with Greg.
Okay.
He helped do the study with Greg.
Yeah, his tool is just fascinating because I'm like, why can't Google do this? If somebody can build a tool, the transparency company, that can detect fake reviews to a pretty good accuracy, like why can't Google do it? Like they can, but why don't they?
Like any AI, though, there's false positives. I ran it on
Sure.
Barbara's account, which I know is 100% clean, and it found 20% of her reviews were suspect. And I think Google is caught in this bind where every time they take too many down, you can see it blowing up in the forums. If they take too few down, it blows up in the forums. And the way the AI works, it's two sides of a coin. It's not perfectly human. It doesn't have human discretion. It's a statistical method, and it makes mistakes, either too many fake reviews or too many good reviews taken down. And they tend towards thinking with hubris, with arrogance, that they can understand which ones are the bad ones and not use them. They don't fully appreciate the impact that it has on the other businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see
Well,
Luke's question there about keyword spam. Sorry, I just wanted to address that. But I don't disagree. I think that keyword stuffing is a problem. It gives people an unfair advantage. It's just Google has made it very evident based on their lack of action that they don't care. Like I really don't think Google prioritizes descriptors at all, from where they stand.
Yeah, unless there's 70 of them, they may.
Right. Well, so even then, oh my gosh, we have cases on the forum that I've been sending back for 8 months. And it's we're talking paragraphs of descriptors.
Right.
It's
well,
crazy.
You can put up to 300 characters in a title. Mike, I've seen you have one of those, and I have one of those too. 297. And Google did not action. It's the interesting thing is they say one thing and they do another. It's right. Yes, the guidelines are gray, but come on, have a hard line somewhere. And the fact is that it does damage businesses. It damages the legitimate businesses who are doing things the right way.
The reality of Google, though, is that if they can't do it at scale without people and they can't do it cheaply, they're not going to do it. So, and the other problem with Google is because they're a bottom-up engineering group where individuals come up with their own ideas, there is no benefit to those groups dealing with reviews. Absolutely none. So there is no direction from the top. There's no direction from the bottom. There's no cost incentive. It's not illegal. The Section 230 protects them categorically. So there are no incentives to fix either business names or review spam. And so it's discouraging to me, having been here. I remember in 2007, 2008, writing this article contrary to Bill Slosky. He was saying it would get worse and worse, and I was saying it would self-correct. I think Bill was right in 15 years of retrospection. So it's a problem.
And as and to that point, Mike, we know that Google also, whenever they implement something, they have to do it for the world, right? They can't just do it for the United States, which I think is also stupid because you should be able to program that. But
they do program it with categories. They have 165 countries, and each country they map to a GCID. They map a specific language to it. So clearly they can customize it. To the person who wrote about name spam being so terrible, I would say that rebranding your business is a legitimate activity so that you tell people not just who you are, but what you do. And I think you should rebrand it with intention. not with the intention of just spamming Google, but with the intention of doing better on Google and better informing your customers what you do. I don't see any problem with that anymore. If Google's going to say, put 2 or 3 descriptors in, then put 2 or 3 descriptors in and make it your name, put it everywhere, put it on your sign, put it on your letterhead. And, you might as well be competitive and make it your name. And we see that frequently. I mean, I've been recommending that for 15 years, but I never went to 3, 4, 5 descriptors. But it's a decent tactic, and clearly Google isn't going to do much about it.
Yeah.
And as long as you validate it correctly, I think it's a totally good tactic.
Yeah, but and we also have to look at the flip side of that, and that is okay. So how is that going to harm people in the future? And my prediction is very simple: is that okay? So we've already seen this year people rebranding the heck out of themselves, especially in the PI space. Heck, I even have an offering service that does this, right? But it's going to reach a critical mass at some point. I don't think it's going to be next year. I think it's going to be at least 2 to 3 years out, where it just gets around, and then every SEO marketing company out there just says, this is part of our process. You come to us, we are going to force you to rebrand, or we're going to recommend that you rebrand, because this is the only way you can be competitive. And I think Colin, if I remember correct, Joy, put out an article about this, which is that critical mass is going to happen, and then everybody is going to be XYZ law group, personal injury lawyer, Los Angeles. And when that happens, and you couple that with generic terms, where somebody wants to be, plumber San Diego. Okay, well, what happens when you have 10 or 15 or 20 plumber San Diegos? Your discovery is total crap, basically, at that point. And you shot yourself in the foot. So I think that's where it's heading, and I don't think there's anything we can do to stop it. What are your thoughts, Joy? Or Mike?
I guess I would say that I believe a business can have good branding and have some descriptors. And I think that's what they should strive for, is that balance, so that they do stand out when everybody else says plumber, Las Vegas, you stand out, and you reinforce that with other advertising. I think it's gotten to the point where clicks are expensive in many industries. I think traditional advertising still takes on value. And I think you want to reinforce your brand while still having a few words. I know that Luke just noted that he thinks this is depressing. It's a depressing reality of having a monopoly in the search space. And it's just reality, right? And I think that you can still run a great business. And I think you have an obligation to run a great business. And I think that you need to fuck Google and do what you can. So.
All right, somebody needs a screenshot of that and send it to me. I'm just saying. But yeah, and Luke, you are correct. It is depressing, but it's reality, like Mike is saying. And we need to face that reality, and we need to come straight at it and prepare for it, basically, as business owners. So, and that's our job. Our job is to tell you kind of what's going on and what we see, and what marry it up with what you see too. So. Yeah, Joy, do you have any final thoughts?
It doesn't have to be depressing. I'm really we've made this strategy work for people. So honestly, you just have to roll with what Google's doing. Don't try and fight them, because there's no point. You'll waste a lot of effort and time. So you just got to roll with it. So figure out the easiest way to make the strategy work for you and do that. And there's lots of ways to do that without worrying about messing up your branding, or, it's not going to cost millions of dollars. You don't have to go redo all your billboards. It's not that challenging. So honestly, you can make it work for you.
Right. It's like content. It's like photos. It has to work for your customers, for you, and for Google. And that's true across all assets that you have. And again, we saw it in photos. We're seeing it in reviews. We're seeing it in naming. We see it in content. The content, all of it has to serve two masters: the sort of semi-immature, dumb AI machine and the human being. Mm-hmm. And the person who serves them both well is the one who's going to do better in this.
Yeah. I do want to say one thing, and that is that, have helped, just like Joy, have helped quite a lot of businesses do a rebrand. And while Google thinks that there's not a lot of suspensions that come with name spam, there are. So I would encourage you to make sure that you do read the guidelines, and make sure that you rebrand. When you're rebranding your business, rebrand it 100% the guidelines, because you're going to be subject to an attack over the next couple of years. As more and more companies are doing this, before it becomes normalized, like we were discussing, suspensions can happen. You're going to get reported just for the name spam. And if Google sees anything else wrong with that listing, you can have a suspension. So just be ready for the suspension.
In
That's
fact,
all I ask.
isn't there a story? Like, I have a client in the same city you had a client, and I kept reporting your client.
And I kept reporting your client.
Oh, no, I'm pure as the driven snow, Ben.
Yeah, right.
Who won?
I think we called it a draw after we realized it was each other's client.
Oh, yes. I remember that one. I didn't report that one actually, but
No,
yes,
I didn't
we
think
did
you
call it a draw.
Okay.
It's hilarious. There's so much that goes on in the back end, guys. You have no idea. Anyway, so look, we're 10 minutes over. Thank you everybody for hanging out. Joy, thank you for joining us. Mike, thank you for joining. I remember when we met 7 years ago, I think it was something like that. You were both my mentors in Google My Business. So thank you for coming on and joining us here today. And thank you everybody for coming. And if you have any questions, you can find all three of us. We're on social, Joy, Mike, and I. So happy.
Although I
to
much
answer
prefer an
questions.
email, mike@blumenthals.com or mblumenthal@nearmedia.co, just because it's long form. I have trouble, if you haven't noticed, restricting myself to 280 characters.
Tweet threads, Mike. Come on.
And Mike, whatever you do, just don't reply with your air quotes.
Most humans do not deserve that. Google deserves it. Facebook deserves it.
Please tell me somebody screenshotted that so I can go on Twitter later.
Yes, please. Right on. Well, cool. Again, thanks everybody. And just to round this out, just so you know, December 16th at the same time, 10 o'clock Pacific, we are going to be covering local service ads. We're going to have Nava Hopkins, Tom Waddington, and Matt Cassidy are going to be joining us. And we're going to be talking all about GLSA, what it can do for your business, and how you can improve it. So with that, thank you. Yes, and air quotes do rock sad. Thank you. All right, with that, we're going to close this out, and everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks for having us.